We're going to review a non-code, so hopefully this is code you haven't never seen. That's going to be very strange. We're going to be reviewing code, and actually we're not going to look at it at all. But we're going to review it, so that's really kind of weird, right? We're going to review code. We're going to use for that tools because we cannot, of course, not look at or review the code without looking at it. So we're going to handle tools that will tell us a number of things. And that's where you're going to be the hero of the session also. So that's why I left you in a minute. I expect you to talk. Well, not the two of you here, nor Petra, but I expect to have things from you, okay? This is never the same session. You're going to look at what we see in the code, and you're going to tell me, oh, I think that's this, or I can infer that kind of information. I expect you, by the end of the session, to have an opinion of the code without seeing it, okay? And that's going to be very interesting. So who has done code reviews? I mean, on things that's not done internally, like post-mortem stuff, like coming from an external company? No? Yeah, a few of you, okay. So usually when you handed some code, you have to do the code review for some reasons: performance, security, stability, migration, whatever. You have to do that, and it really looks like this picture. You know, it's kind of present in the same time, but it's not a nice looking one, okay? Also, what the code we're going to review right now, since you don't know anything about it, well, you also have no prejudice about it, okay? You don't know the author, okay? It's not the intern from some place. It's not some other company you've heard about or some legacy. No, you have no idea about it. So you cannot really infer anything at that point. What else? You never heard about it because I don't know the name. You don't know the name either. You've never seen it running. You actually don't know even what it does, okay? That's really the ground zero of reviewing code, nothing at all. That's going to be impressive. So can we form an opinion? Can we have something at the end of the hour, at the end of the 45 minutes? So we're going to, well, we can review it by reading it. That would be an art, but that's probably going to be way too big for us. Okay, even if we split 1,000 files among the, I don't know, 100 of us today, that's not going to cut it, okay? We're not going to finish that by the end of the hour and share that and be able to understand what it does. So, of course, it works, but it's going to be way too slow, so we need more tools. What else can we use? Well, unit test would be maybe a solution. If it passes, of course it's good. Please do unit tests. But if you want to do exploration on the code, if you want to learn things that is done or borderline situations, that's not going to cut it. So unit tests are made to make sure that the situation you know is giving you the result you expect, and not something weird in between, okay? But if you want to explore something, then of course it's unknown territory, it's uncharted by definition. Dynamic analysis also would be helpful here. You have to run it, but there we're not going to run it. We just want to review the code, not even test it live, so no installation. And we just can rely on the current code, what is already produced, meaning that if you had just the conception documents and no code, then of course we cannot review it with the tools we're going to use. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a retirement home for elephants. Among others, I've been doing PHP since the last millennium, which makes it, I'm not so young. Probably you're the oldest of the room, right? Again, yeah, that happens more and more, I see. But I actually do static analysis on a regular basis. I'm going to present part of the result I bring, but not only, okay? So I'm not going to sell you my stuff. You're going to take a lot, so like 8 or 9 different tools. And I'm very sorry for that, but I do not speak Dutch after a few years. Why do we use static analysis? Well, if you think about it, code is an highly structured data set. It's our database or whatever. If you think about it, the number of decisions you take whenever you're writing just one line of code is absolutely astronomical. You have to know that the variable exists. You have to know that the function you call exists. You have to know the after effects, the before effect, the prerequisites, and how does it fit inside the sequence of events. Okay. So it's very complex. You put extra layers all the time, and it's structured. So we like that, right? We always like the structure, the data to be structured, but we have no idea how to query it. Okay. And that's what we're going to use with static analysis tool. We have different ways to query it. So what can we infer just by reading code? The first idea here is, for example, just checking the features. If you want to do migration for PHP 7 to PHP 7.1, here is a breakdown of the features that are here on 7 and 7.1. and those that are disappearing, that are in red on the top, and the ones that are actually appearing, that are below, that are new features, okay? Most of the time when you consider migration, of course, you want to emphasize on backward incompatibility, right? New features, if they're not here, not used, it still works, but you want to focus on the other one. Different tools to actually spot them. Of course, linting, grep is important, and knowing your code and static analysis are the two tools that you're going to use that will yield the most results, okay? Meaning that most of the time, not always, but most of the time, you will get some feedback that will direct you directly inside the code and inside the file saying, okay, this place, this function does not exist, this feature has gone, this will yield an error, okay? And you will get feedback. So that works also. The interesting part actually is that it works also for new features, okay? So making sure that the unit test works on the new version is good, but you're not yet using new features. And most of the time, new features, even without the new version, can help you, can be interesting to know and to change. So I'm still talking about stuff you don't know, so I'm going to give you a number of specific elements. We're going to start with a very broad tool, which just lists the features that are being used inside the code, okay? And the features of no, that's the other side. The features inside the PHP code can be ranging a wide range of different activities. Maybe, well, PHP itself, there are a number of features for it. Composer, web stuff, namespaces, classes, variables, stuff like that, okay? There's way too many, there's probably 200 of them. So let's start on the first list. What are the specific PHP features that are being used? And that is where I want you to take a look at and tell me if you find something that's interesting or not. Well, obviously, you can understand all the ticks. Empty ticks means that it is not used. Full ticks means it's being used. And the one with the cross means that we cannot actually understand or check that feature because the PHP version being used to analyze the code is not compatible. So this was tested on PHP 5.6, which means that coalesce and null coalesce do not exist, and they will yield, if they were used, they would yield a compilation error. So that would not be part of the analysis. Anything there? Yes?
They use both include and include once?
Yeah, they use both include and include once. How strange is that?
Well, it could be strange.
It could be strange. Actually, 99% of the code is using both of them at the same time, especially when you're using Composer, which is weird. But yeah, so they use both of them. Usually I like to hunt the ones and remove them, so that would be good. But obviously it's not under control, and they use both of them. Interestingly, they use autoload. I didn't put the section about Composer, but they do not use Composer at all. Yes. They use? Alternative syntax. Oh, yeah. Why would they be using alternative syntax? They merge XML and PHP. That could be one. There's a broader explanation for that. But if you dig a little, make it a little larger, what would that be? Who is using alternative syntax when writing PHP? Templating. Okay. So templating in general. So we have templating here, so we may infer that they have web development, okay? It's not obvious, right? PHP is for web, but we could run it on CLI. Anyway, so yeah, that's an interesting one. Probably we can spot some templating system later.
I see they use the @operator.
They use the @operator like 100% of other projects, and?
So they might suppress errors?
Oh, I'm sure they suppress error, yes. I'm definitely sure they suppress error. We don't have more details at that point, okay? We just know that they're using it. We don't know if they used a lot or a little. We don't know if they have valid reason for that, because there are still a few PHP functions that actually yield some error, even though you don't want them to, okay? So you have to use the no. But that is completely, nondescript. Like, everyone does that. Everyone does that. Unless you have a real, like, 4 or 5 files project or component where you can really skip that. Usually everyone does that. Anything else? File upload. Oh, okay. So we've seen that we have probably templating system, and we also have file upload. So again, web application, of course. So yeah, that's a good start. No goto, no labels where that makes sense. Casting and resource nested loops. What else? No uncompilable file. Okay, so apparently they were linting it. Let's go a little further. Functions. Functions. Here are the, I would say, the description of when they declare functions, not methods, functions. Okay, so first they have functions. It's not just purely OOP code. They have functions. Again, we don't know how many of them. Scalar typing, return typing, nullable, everything means that we didn't check that on very recent PHP versions. What else? Is there anything interesting there? 5.3, no closure. 5.3. Closure, yeah, they come 5.3, but you don't need always closure, right? So the absence of closure, the presence of closure would mean that the code is 5.3 or more. The absence of closure, we don't have many details yet to think about where. So that's interesting to note, but I did not actually make the difference between the closures and the callbacks. So maybe that could be interesting. You know that they use callbacks but not closures. Could be interesting to add that. Anything else?
Constant scalar expression.
No, you're talking too much.
Dynamic function calls could be nicely unpredictable.
Sorry?
Dynamic function calls could be nicely unpredictable.
Okay, now you're judging their own usage, okay? And I'm just on the Boolean, that's too much for me, okay? They're using dynamic function calls, so at some point they put the function name in a variable and they call it this way, right? So it can be, yeah, it can be dynamical, but it is dynamical, but that's all. I'm not sure we can, maybe you don't like that, maybe you don't use that, right? Is it?
There's use cases for it, but generally...
I understand that. So generally speaking, it's something I like to check. When I do an audit, I usually focus on that because people hide lots of hidden monsters there. But just the fact that you use it, maybe it's okay. Just above, anything special there?
Yeah, I find that one quite worrying.
Okay, worrying, maybe not the word. I'm going to give the speak to someone else. Yes? They don't use type int, okay? Why do yeah, well, that you can read the Boolean from the screen. What can you make with that? Okay, yeah, so there's no mention of type docs here, so I have no idea. I didn't even check, but I don't remember seeing any type doc in it. Okay, the absence of type hint, the only thing we can take from that, it's kind of old code, okay? Or maybe they're not used to that. I want to finish on that. What did you take from the usage, no usage of ellipses and usage of function get args?
Dynamic arguments?
Yes, that's the feature. They're using one of the two of them. That's all? No? Okay. Then we go on. It's fine, you don't find everything. Take a look at the classes. Dynamic class, dynamic functions. So we have everything, all of them. Anything interesting there? Yeah? What does that mean? It's old, or it includes old code, right? Okay, what is the main reason for having PHP 4 constructor in modern code? What is the main use case? How does that happen that you still have on PHP 5.6 code something that dates back from PHP 4? Old library, like? Yeah, PDF stuff, FPDF, stuff like that. They've been around for ages. So maybe we can take a look at that. They're including old libraries. What else? Yeah, some multiple classes in one file, so that's maybe cache or not. The rest is kind of simple, right? No interfaces, no traits. Again, as we've seen for the type hint, they're still using, very naked PHP, right? Like PHP 5.3 stuff. So it's kind of old. Static properties method, okay, that's been around for a long time. No anonymous classes, but couldn't be tested. So that's it. Sorry? No interfaces, yeah. So it looks like very naked PHP, like PHP 4 style, made into a little more modern into PHP 5. Finally, list of extensions. Here is the full list of extensions they're using. There's actually another 10 meters of non-used extension because we cover 150 of them. So, but here is the one that they're using. Okay, all the API that are being used is there. Of course, we're not going to see the file upload because it's not there. It's not an extension, it's really a feature. We mentioned that we expect a web application. There's the XOB output buffer. So that kind of makes sense and complete what we've seen. Something else? MySQL. So there's one database. How many databases? There's PDO and MySQL. When was MySQL dropped? It's not exactly dropped. It's not anymore in the distribution 5.5. At least they deprecated. There is XML for the. There's XML apparently used. There's GD, so producing pictures. But the rest, the one that I really find interesting is event. I actually haven't checked what they're doing with that. I have to check. The rest is very standard. Yes?
When it says used, does it mean that the code base contains method?
Yes. Method, constant, classes, or something. Okay. Oh, how come do we end up using ereg? There's like just ereg and ereg-i, right? Yeah. But there's actually a large number of other functions. You know why split was deprecated and disappeared in PHP 7? Because it's part of ereg. It's such an old extension that not only they don't have the prefix, but all the function names are completely different. So there's ereg, ereg-i, ereg replace, but there was SQL case, split, and split is gone because of that. Okay? So that may be it. That may be it. And anyway, it's just disappeared in 7, right? And we're checking that on 5. So let's go on. We've already discovered a number of things. They use a number of features. Another one that I like that is more personal to their way of coding is what I call favorite. Okay? Think about it. Who prefer print? Who prefer echo? So print, short majority. And who prefer echo? The rest. Okay, good. And there's like another 5% who doesn't raise any hands, so they're using both, right? So basically, you can choose one of the two, right? And sometimes you don't care, because sometimes it's not important to your process, to your project, that you choose one or the other. And sometimes you want to choose it. And here is two of the favorites that I like to check first. Echo. And apparently here, echo, they use like almost 9,000 echo, and there's just like 6 rebellious print. Does it make sense? Just think of them. What we have seen already, we have already inferred that probably they're using all libraries, right? All libraries. So that's code that did not master, right? That's code that they did not write. So either that they were lucky and whatever old library they got was only on echo and that fit with their style, or there were some prints, and then that sucks. That sucks, right? But there's 6 rebellious. That's really low out of 9,000. I've seen a question?
No, I was just want to suggest that they find compatibility.
Yes. OK, so on the other hand, array is always out of 10,000 of them, they are strictly always using array the long time, OK? Which looks like me. I've been using, as I said, PHP since last millennium. I'm stuck with array, OK? Don't try to make me use the brackets. It's too small. I don't see that. I need to change my glasses, stuff like that. Nah. Why are you laughing? Come on. You'll be in my place one day. Anyway, so I'm stuck with array, and there's no big problem. What I find interesting here is that they are completely consistent with themselves. There's just no short array syntax. That's not the case in any situation there. They just use and stick to the old one. So that's interesting. Now, I only gave you two favorites. I actually, at the moment, have how many of them? 16 minus 1, 15? I think I have a 16th one that I was doing like yesterday or something. Here is all the favorite I have currently. So they're small because I don't want you to read exactly the names, but you can guess them. For example, when they unset, they use the unset function and not the unset type cast, okay, which usually no one does. On the other hand, when they call an object which has a constructor without parameter, which is first weird, but whatever, 1/3 of the time they use parentheses, and 2/3 of the time they do not use parentheses. You know, you can new standard class or new standard class parentheses. So both the case are the same. It does not change the face of PHP to add or remove the parentheses, but they're not consistent. Okay. What else? The one that you don't see here is actually a new line, the 24, okay? What can you do? You can do /n, or you can do, yeah, this ugly and such a long name for such a short character. So here they're consistent. What else? That's the lowercase here is for true, false, and null. Okay, so true. So there are actually three situations. There is the true, false, null as lowercase, as uppercase, and as mixed, because there are people who actually do mixed. Okay, that may be the first one only uppercase, or that's like a mix. Yeah, that. Okay, so you have to be careful, because when you run that on your own code, you learn stuff. Okay, and I'm telling you that because I did that on my own code, and I do check everything before I actually commit it. Okay, so yeah, that's interesting. They're kind of consistent. There are a number of situations where they are very consistent with themselves, and there are a few situations that are not under control. Okay, like the bracketed here, when you have one line after a structure, okay, like a for each, for something like that, do they put always a bracket, the curly bracket or not? 2/3, 1/3. Again, that means that inside the team, they're not agreeing with each other. It's not a standard. Okay, maybe there is one rebellious guy who just keep on, going on Git and removing by night, and the following day they add it again. Maybe there's a fight like that. That happens. But here they're not. It's not a standard. They did not decide. Okay. The Yoda comparison, on the other hand, also obviously they are mostly doing it. There's like a few rebellious situations. So that's interesting, right? Just the features, just knowing how the team is actually making a number of choices or not, is already giving us a number of information about the way the code runs. Now, we've just been looking at stuff that are very general, and we have not much time, so I want to go very specific into static analysis. And one thing I like about static analysis is, unlike metrics, it will actually pinpoint the line, the file, the line number, and the problem it has found. Okay, so here is one of the results, because we're going to see a lot of those like that. But just one result. This was one analysis. Do I have to explain you what is this problem? Do I have? Please don't be shy, because some people do not understand. Okay, there is a dir __ dir __ constant that has been a magic PHP function constant since PHP 5.3. Okay, so again, we're back to this compatibility stuff, right? So since PHP 5.3, you can use __ dir _ instead of dir name file. Okay, so it's more compact, and it's the same. It's exactly the same. You're saving a few calls. And apparently, they're using that a lot. Okay, you can see, well, this is, of course, again, always the same analysis. You have the file name and on the line, and you know exactly the code that's being there. Okay? What kind of analysis can be done here? Well, you can find inspiration from a wide range of references. The PHP manual itself is littered with warning. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. If you try to do everything at the same time, you're probably going to spend too much time on your PHP. But PHP manual has lots of them. There's a number of people who have their own references. Okay, they say, here is the way I want the good code to look like. Okay. For example, in Exakat, we have something that's called Radwell code. John Radwell is actually some engineer who published a list of things he liked to see in the code. Out of the 10 rules, Exakat already had 7, so I just did the 2 extra ones, and that's a full report on him. Just his solution. The 2 of them that was not done, actually I didn't like them. But I don't care. This is the way he looks at code, so that's good for him. So here, security, of course, you can make focus on different aspects. On clean code, there are other inspiration there, here and there. And just running the list, all of them on the code, you've got this reportation. And that's just the overall presentation, because generally speaking, you actually end up with a graph that looks like that, which is that you have one file that's a huge centered file that actually concentrates all the problems, and then all the others are really small. And that's very typical of frameworks. Okay, especially when they have kind of monolithic God class-like in the beginning. They have something that concentrates everything and the rest has very little. If it's a little more spread, or if you have components of the same size, it usually looks more like that. There's still one that's kind of more than the others, And then quickly after that, everything is about the same level. And that basically looks like what we have here, okay? So they apparently have 2 or 3 files, which of course I do not show at the moment. And the rest is about the same with the level of 400 issues. Given the number of false positive, it may be okay and not too bad. Okay, so let's go inside. I'm not going to give you, of course, file numbers, file names and line numbers, but here is a selection of, how many? 8 of them, among the one I prefer, actually. You've got the name of the analysis, especially, for example, the one I hate, which are nested ternaries. Okay, so you put a ternary, you know, condition, question mark, one result column, one other result, and then you just nest them, okay? The current world record I have is 5 levels of nesting. They were nice, they gave us parentheses, so we could actually understand, but that was still a huge line, okay? And two is actually happens on like 10% of the code. So out of us, the 2 first row here are doing that. That's again Ramon, right? Yeah. So this analysis in particular is quite frequent, 90% of the time, well, 10% of the time. And here, on the current code we're reviewing, they don't do it at all. Clean, no nested. Same stuff for the others. You should not throw an exception from a destructor. Don't do that. That's probably going to crush your PHP. That's a PHP 7 representation, but it's not frequent. No one does that, so it's OK. On the other hand, using useless parentheses, like with include, void, with return, include, what else? Yield, clone, don't do that, it's useless. But everyone does it, okay? And they still do it here. Other interesting things? Mistakes. Oh, I like the substr mistakes. You can check that, you know, when you try to shrink a string and compare it with the literal, but forget that the literal is actually not of the good size. Because here the substring is going to take 2 characters. And you're going to compare that with a string that's actually 3. Don't laugh at that, you know? 10% of people do that mistake. And I fixed it myself yesterday, so I'm not even laughing at that, okay? And the not is fun. I actually learned that it was a JavaScript mistake, okay? JavaScript import. It works, but don't do it not. There's a cast Boolean that we can use directly in PHP. Yeah. I'm not even sure it's more efficient. Anything interesting to take from that? Of course, I didn't give you the 300 list of analyses. That would be way too long to analyze. Do you get an impression from there? Do you understand all those analyses?
No, yeah. So 2% of the files contain AAA function call?
Yeah, multiple argument with the same name. That's typical of PHP 5 feature because PHP 7 just do not lint, okay? And yes, 2% of the code actually has multiple argument with the same name. Sometimes it's even a feature.
Is it the function call or the definition?
The definition.
Oh, really?
Or the definition. Yeah, that looks like a definition. Yeah, method or closures or whatever, they put several times the same name. That doesn't work anymore, it's not lintable, okay? But here they don't use that, so it's cool. The for each with the reference, they forgot a few of them. So if you want, we can also select more detailed information about, for example, PHP 7 compatibility. I said we've reviewed that with PHP 5. And here is the breakdown of PHP 7. So we're going to see in a moment the linting of the code. That's part of the static analysis. But here we can go with static analysis a lot deeper because we exactly know what are the problem or the warnings. So as you can see, the code includes 8 usage of MySQL. We mentioned there is MySQL and there is PDO. The 2 of them are being used, okay? Here, just 8 of them, and we could actually follow the link and get the details. What else do they have? They could actually change, empty, you can now put the result of the expression directly inside the empty argument and not put it first in a variable and then move it later, okay? And what else? And parentheses, they hide a number of things inside parentheses. You can use parentheses to act like an arrowbas. Okay, it will hide and will not scream if you make a mistake in it. To give you a little detail inside, how does automated code review? Well, it follows a process that looks like this one. Basically, it starts with the script you have, something that you call code. That's actually a file of text. Okay, it's just plain text. At that point, PHP doesn't understand what it's there. So it goes through the tokenizer. Who's ever used the tokenizer? Okay, let me rephrase that. Who's been using PHP? Okay, so you've been using the tokenizer. Okay, tokenizer is the part that really read the text file and turn that into little words that PHP understands. Okay, that's the important part. Once you're there, it's like you've smashed your Lego brick house into little bricks, and you have just all the details, but it's all separated. You have to rebuild something, and actually PHP 7 does that nowadays. It's the AST, Abstract Syntactic Tree. And you understand now where are the class, which part is the name, which part is a namespace that goes somewhere else, which is the extent, the list, and stuff like that. And you have all the details. It goes into the database. The database itself is more conceptual. If you use, for example, FAN or PHP Stan, they will be all done that. They were all doing that in memory, no intermediate database. Okay. If you use PHP Storm, I think they have a specific database for that inside the IDE. Exakat has a graph database for that, so different ways. At that point, you just have the code in a way that you can understand. What do you look for? Well, with the same resources we've been using to now, you get a reference. So you get a list of rules that explains what you want to see in the code or what you don't want to see in the code. Okay? Those lists is completely arbitrary, how long as you want, how detailed as you want, but you code that into the database and you get a report. Okay? To give you an idea, when you write PHP code, there's the little words that I mentioned. There's like the first third are completely forgotten by PHP. Okay, white space, comments, everything goes away. It just doesn't even care about it. So, okay, so that's 1/3 of your work that just goes down the drain. The second third of your work is everything that are delimiters, parentheses, blocks, quotes, single quotes, things like that. Again, PHP is going to remove that, although there's usually some meaning there, and it will use that in the AST just to know that he has to read the sentence and stop there, okay? But it's probably not going to use it later. Finally, well, the last third is actually your work that actually runs something. Yeah, that's kind of impressive. Give you an idea with more element. Here is a little script that's actually turned into an AST, okay? That's not exactly the AST that PHP used. That's the one I use internally, but AST may have different definitions. You can find the PHP script itself at the top, which has 2 elements. There are actually 2 instructions. The first one is the assignation. The second one is the conditional instruction. And again, you go inside. There's one side with the condition, then the then the else, and you go again, and the sequence and stuff like that. As you can see, it's really verbose, but you have everything. You have all the elements. You have dropped all the things that are making the delimiters, and you can go around checking that the variables exist or not. Okay? The thing that usually you don't have is little details like that, which is that the AST doesn't really care about the order of the execution. Okay? As you can see, the left and right here are not exactly in the right order, because just a representation, just definition of stuff. For that, we can go further and look at the flow control graph, which is basically based on the previous presentation, on the present AST, but now takes into account the order of execution, okay? Notice also that I've reduced the AST to expressions, things that are almost atomical, okay? So the assignation of the Y, for example, just now 1 block, because I don't need to go into more details than that. Then you see 1 branch, you see the common branch, and then the 2 branches, and then you end up with the end of the script. That gives us another and complementary information from the previous one. AST is good for definition checking. Here, of course, that's the order of execution. Finally, and I like it because it really makes you feel how complex maybe your code and you're solving several problems at the same time. Here is the third diagram we use, which is the data dependency. It's again based on the previous one, but now you can see how you end up creating one variable or the other. So for example, here you can read directly that to get a is 3 and exist it at the end of the script, you need a condition which is that x is smaller than 10. Now it's completely obvious, okay? And on the previous one, it was not obvious. You actually had to follow the script and understand all the sequence. Here, in 2 lines, you know that there is one condition for this to be reached. It's inside the code. And when you write the code, you're solving all those different diagrams at the same time. I see you're interested in ASTs. If you want to have your own because you think that the rules that I've shown are not sufficient yet, you can write your own. Please do it. It's, I think, a very interesting time to be doing that kind of research and development. Don't do the AST yourself. I've been there twice. It's a mess. It's getting better, but it's a mess. So the best would be probably to use the AST extension, which is in PHP 7. That's good. And it's done directly by the guy who actually coded the engine. So you'll get the best and fastest AST. If you're stuck on PHP 5, there's the parser on PHP 5. Exakat has its own. It's not easy to use, but it's in a graph database. So if you want to write gremlin queries, that could be interesting to use. Sonar has its own, also done in Java. PHP Storm has its own internally, which is more geared toward efficiency, okay? You want feedback as you're typing stuff, so it has to be really fast. There's a number of abstractions that it won't do, but it will give you a feedback very fast. And there's better reflection, if that's the way it's supposed to be. But James is also on the conference, so you may actually meet him and talk to him. Another one that gives you feedback, so based on everything I've shown, here is fan PHP analyzer, and I ran it on the code we're talking about. It took actually 5,000 results out of 36 types. I'm just let you take a look at that on your own. I don't think there's much to explain. You find, as usual, the file name, you find the line number, you find an explanation, and a little documentation. Anything interesting to read from there? Of course, okay, let me rephrase that. I want people who hasn't talking to raise the hand and say something interesting. Okay, say it.
It looks to me that the first error is, or issue is caused because the class includes code, something like that. Because it says that this is not declared. So
Yeah, how come this, well, in what situation this would be not declared?
well, if you say, for instance, you have a class,
Yeah.
and then inside the brackets you do include.
Yes, and this include as
It would not be declared.
something that looks like. So exactly that's the situation. Which framework are you thinking about?
I'm not thinking about framework yet.
Okay, so you read the name, that's good. That's the name of the...
I know the framework.
Okay. And is that's what they're using, what they're using for the templating system, right? Yeah, okay. I think Zen framework also, like the Zen one also had this system of views. So you have the .phtml in which you write something like this and then the name of the parameter you want to display. And all those PHTML would be stored outside. So basically, when you look at the script itself, it looks like you're using this, but there's no context. Okay, you cannot run it directly. It will be dynamically included in the class, and at that point, this will be available, and then it will actually output the correct data. Okay, and of course, this is a static analysis problem, right? We do not know at that point how it's going to be included, especially if it's dynamically included. Okay, so we have, as we already inferred, we have a templating system, and it's using this inclusion style way of doing things. Anything else? So we've spotted that it's YE. Okay, that's an easy one. What else? I think you want to say something?
Yeah,
No? How come do you have 32 times the same function that is actually duplicated? Actually, there are two of them. There are two functions. The function T and the function getWeek are there, and they're defined in the code 32 times, 16 times each. And now we have an expert in YE that's going to be interesting. Do you have any explanation for that? Yes. Okay. And where is it? Where does it reside? Is there like a central function library to include?
He does everything. It's not like Symfony, which uses all kinds of small parts.
Okay. So up to now, when I went into the code, I actually checked. They use this function. Obviously, like the template is using a lot of translation, But apparently they don't want to include like the central library with all the functions, so they declared it locally and just make it like an idempotent function, just returning the argument, and that's all. Okay, so they're probably saving that for performance reasons. But that's kind of weird. That's kind of interesting to take a look at. We're going to move on because we're close. Oh, let's skip that and finish with this one. Linting, okay? We've seen directly static analysis. The Postman static analysis is just linting. If you want, coming from this talk, and just remember that, just lint your code, okay? Linting your code is PHP minus L. Everyone does that? No one raised their hand, so I will say no. So I run one linting on the whole application, and there's a lot to say here. So we're going to say to stick there. What do you take here? I just run the parallel one, so I don't spend too much time. Please do that. Don't check them sequentially. It's way too long. But I only get one error. I only get one error out of 3,000 files. Wow. And what error do I get? Switch with to default. That's really the kind of stuff you can read. Well, first you can read it. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing you can check. Anything interesting to read there? You want something to add? Yeah? Yeah. So the linting found at least two default, maybe more than that, but just two of them. And anyone knows MPDF? That's going. Again, I'm going to see Greg hairs raising the hand. Okay, no one has been using MPDF. It's like a PHP 4 function class. Probably the one that we spotted that has the PHP constructor. But it's been a really long time, and well, it's not been updated. So that's the idea. As you see, 3,000 files, so it's a fairly large application, and they just have one error. Who can say the same? Who can raise the hand and say, okay, I've checked my linting, and all my 3,000 files in my code is actually lintable? Ooh, good. So that's one thing. They obviously are under control. If I check the other one, the other version from 5.4 to 7.2, not a single error. Ooh. Oh, no one's talking, right? Not a single error. Yeah. What are you going to say?
Why does it, yeah.
So if you want to do checklint, first my piece of advice is do checklint with the middle version, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, if backward compatibility is important. 7, 7.1, 7.2, we have the branch for it, so there will be 7.2 and what I currently call 7.3 by lack of another name, but I usually build on a regular basis, once a week, the source from PHP and run it. And obviously, I did that. That actually happened like 2 months ago. I apparently compiled PHP 7.2, and the error that was available on 7.1 and 7.0 was not in 7.2. So that's where you have to know that if you're running with new technology, that may be wrong, that may be full of bug, okay? So I use that as a hint, but if it's not there, or if I get feedback, maybe I just can, let it go, okay? And I actually checked that this morning, and it's not longer the case anymore, okay? So actually, I should change that slide, but I thought it's interesting because don't take for granted the result, especially for the newer version, okay? Just focused on the middle version. Minor version is overkill. There's like 130 version from 5.4 to 7.2. That will be way too long, and that will yield all the time the same results. So don't do that, okay? Middle version is sufficient. If you want to see the profile of the application, it's always very interesting. There's, for example, this evolution from 5.2, lots of errors, and then less and less and less. This is typical of very new or young projects. Okay, you get excited, you don't want to learn PHP 5.2 problem, you start with the current one, and then you make sure it's forward compatible. That's good. On the other hand, at the other side, you can see dead project, okay? Stuff that was working at some point, and that no one is taking care about anymore, and then it's just creeping in more and more and more errors. So if you do nothing, yes, your code is going to decay. That happens, okay? So what is that? What is that? Something that started apparently, well, not too far, but is actually stuck somewhere.
Code is not optimized for PHP.
Well, obviously, this is more typical of company work, okay? Because when you start, usually you find the latest, okay? Your hosting company really wants you to close the bug, so you start with the best. Then you work because it's easy, and then when you're here and people say, oh, we have to move, but there's a risk that we may have problem with migration. And then business comes and says, okay, no, we're not going to move until we're sure. And then you get stuck somewhere in the gully, okay? And you're never sure, right? And so young project, old project, usually company project, what the hell is that code? Something that is failing consistently across versions. I need a word because usually I'm very unhappy with that, so give me an adjective for that. Okay, I'm going to need an adjective, not a name, okay? Yeah, buggy code, yeah. Stupid code is a good one also, but that's, yeah. Check that, check your linting, please. That's going to help you a lot, especially since PHP, well, the number of actually error messages reported by linting was 200 here in 5.2, and we're actually up to 900 of them in 7, okay? So PHP is giving you more and more insight about things that may be wrong, okay? It doesn't fix everything. Like we said, several default is good. It's not good. It doesn't check the cases, but it still helps you to clean the code. I'm going to finish that now. We have worked on every detail or a lot of technical aspect of the code. What does this application do? Do you have the first beginning of an idea?
Something with students in school.
Okay, good. You stay here after the session then. I missed something. So where do we go? If we want to know what it does, the naming of everything is useful for you to understand it, okay? And what I call inventories is just extraction the name of the classes, that may be the namespaces, that may be the variable, that may be the indices in the arrays, that may be a number of other things. But select them, extract them, and try to see what happens. Here is, for example, a selection of the error messages that are being used in exit, in die, and in exceptions. What do you get from that? Do you think that stopping the application and saying unable to initialize curl is going to help the user? There's an exception throwing that and probably displaying it, right? Name of the table must be. Yeah, that's interesting, right? I'm the user. I'm going to use phpMyAdmin and fix that. So that's an interesting one. Curl error is probably a security problem, unless it's actually caught as an exception. So, but still, we have absolutely no idea what they're doing there. So let's move to something else. Classes. I need you to say stuff. There's tons of stuff here. Shoot. Attendance module, okay. So what you see here, you have the name of the class. I don't care about the namespace. They're not using namespace anyway, so that's not a problem here. The other one, the number you have is the number of occurrences of this class that's in the code, okay? So you can read, for example, that elective group controller, there are 2 of them in the same namespace, which is global. What do you see? Yes? Some university management system. Just point me a few classes that that's interesting to you. Yeah, borrow books. That's definitely our content. Yeah. What else? What else do you see that's interesting? Yeah.
It looks like that students get notified by SMS.
Yes.
SMS also use the Twilio service.
Yes. Okay, so we're really in a web application. At least maybe it's an intranet or something like that, but that's really web style. Anything interesting there? Maybe a little more technical?
Something called RI installer.
Yeah, there's the air installer, which really speaks for itself, right? You know what's that, right? Yeah, that's the new version. Before that, there was the Q installer, and now it's the air installer. No. Does it ring a bell to you that there's like 5 classes in a code that has no namespaces that are called PDF? No? No? OK. The other one that I really like, that was given to me last week from in Amersfoort, so I will credit them for that. Where is that? This one. First, we have a controller that is there in 3 instances. That's a lot. Secondly, there's a spelling mistake. And the spelling mistake has been there 3 times. So 3 times, someone decided to conceive a class and make a spelling mistake on purpose, which means that they copy-paste. So there's probably copy-paste in the code, right? Same stuff, 2 CK editor. OK, one of them is for PHP4, just in case. OK, I'm just going to wrap it up. So I'm sorry for that, but that's going to be the end. So yeah, the PDF, 5 of them, something you don't see. So we want. There's default controller. Yeah, I'm sorry for that. You don't see that. That's OK. There's the service Twilio. That's really weird that we see another. Yeah, oh no. Yeah, no. It's the 3rd time they come in to tell me to stop. This one has not the same way of. There's not the same coding convention. Right? So it's probably some kind of imported code. We have seen this notion that they have external libraries. What else? So message controller, the air installer. Yeah, I don't know why they have this one. It doesn't make. And that's the one I mentioned. OK? You can check on variables. Does the variable tell you something? Oh, again, I'm sorry. The interesting one is here. There is one variable they use 7,000 times, which is called model. So obviously, and now I'm interested in your feedback on that. The way I interpret that is that YE is actually storing every data in the database. So there should be very little logic, business logic in the code. And that's why you end up with things that are actually purely technical. I mean, every of them could end up in any of our codes, right? Is that the case? OK. So that's my interpretation. Obviously, the guy who wrote it do not put a lot of the business logic in the naming there. Most of the time, it's just grabbing stuff, pushing it to the database. We end up with a few classes that actually have some business logic name, but that's all. Okay? The rest is really just piping and pushing that to the database and handling that later. So maybe it's kind of clean. I will finish with the worst nightmare. So a variable that is used once means that, for example, there's somewhere in the code, $x is 4, which I cannot argue against, right? That's always true. Yeah. And that's all. X is never called again. It's never used. No, not what? 640. So they have a lot of variables. They just use once. They put something in it, and it's like, OK, that's done. So I'm going to skip the metrics, because otherwise they will come back with alboards and lots of things that will kill me. Here is the list. That will be in the slide if you want to take a picture. Here's the list of stuff that I've mentioned. If you're not happy with the 7 I have there, I have another 67 there. OK? Find the one you like. Please, if you don't like any of them, PHP-L is going to be your friend. So at least start with that. OK? And we're just going to wrap it up and give you the names. What we've seen it's a large application, 3,000 files. It's very large, right? Not one guy. One framework, we've seen it with the name. A lot of old libraries, if you've seen, there were also mention of pair. So they used PHP4 stuff, which means they probably have been around for a long time, OK? They have a very low level of issues, OK? I've shown you a number of them, but it's still very lower than anything I've met. So that's an interesting one. They tend to favorite old PHP features, PHP function get arg instead of ellipsis. So they've been, oh yeah, they're coming now. And they deal with cool. Here is, here is the application. Here is the application we've been working on for an hour. Okay? It's actually a company in India. They've been working, I'm oh, okay. No. This is an Indian company. They started in 2009. Was Composer available in 2009? No, they started without it, and then they were upgrading it all the time, and they never included it. Maybe if this goes for Indian school, they don't have, high-end servers. They have to stick with old versions.